Turbo Rescue Megazord is probably my favourite one-off Megazord. By that I mean on its own as a non-combiner in the traditional sense. I think this has a lot of playability as a one-off piece. It does have a combination of sorts, and we'll get on to that. But before then, let's talk the toy history. So this was the second Megazord for the 1997 series Power Rangers Turbo. No flipping occurred either. Japan got it as their second mecha for Carranger, just like we did in Turbo. I suppose because of the added play and appeal of being able to transform these vehicles into individual robots, it kind of decided for them the right order to do this in. They couldn't, for example, give us the Turbo Megazord second when that had less features than this. Funnily, I think, in the show and in the movie, the Turbo Zords are actually created and designed by the first Turbo Rangers themselves, Tommy Cat and everyone in the power chamber. These Zords, the Turbo Rescue Zords though, they just appear out of nowhere, kind of going in with the long-standing precedent set by second Megazords from like the Shogun Megazord onwards. These things sort of just appear. They were inside Artillotron, they're given to them by the Phantom Ranger. There's no quest or real work needed to get them, they are just given them. It's like the writers themselves don't know how to acknowledge why they're replacing the first Megazord, especially considering in the Turbo movie they explicitly said the Turbo Megazord was the most powerful Zord ever. Thanks Zordon. The writers also have to take great pains not to make the original seem inferior in any way, because as toys they're basically being sold side by side on the shelf. Both have to look good, so you get the classic misdirection trick. Look over there, look at this Megazord instead of that one. Definitely still common practice in the show today. Interesting, I think that this is the closest we've ever come to full-on Transformers in Power Rangers, especially given that Hasbro owns the series now. But I think it went even further than Transformers at the time, because not only do these transform from one mode to another, from vehicle into robot, but they also still combine into a full Megazord, just like we'd expect from a Power Rangers toy. Also interesting that this was a year where we weren't leading to any sort of overall combination or Ultra Zord. I remember as a kid thinking they're definitely lining up all the pieces for it, why aren't we ever getting a combination out of them? It took me a little too long back then to realise that we weren't getting one because there wasn't one to be had. These toys are fairly independent and don't combine with each other. We'll come on to that a lot more in the third part of the Turbo Zord videos, but for now, let's talk the design. So by this point of the show's life, we were fully in the pattern now that the Rangers would receive a second Megazord at some point mid-season that riffed on either the first Megazord or possibly the design theme of the season itself. This one, interestingly, kind of riffs on both. You've got definite parallels to the Turbo Zords, but it also still leans into the Turbo Car Ranger suit theme. Unlike Turbo Megazord, which combined and functioned like a car that stood up, this one, they connect in many more directions. On the back of the Turbo Megazord, it's just like the base of a car, but on this one, the Zords all go on slightly differently. It's a trick that can't be repeated. The benefit here, though, is that it doesn't look as bland, either on the front or the back. So there are 5 Turbo Rescue Zords, all with new, even more ridiculous names that you'll instantly forget as soon as you hear them. They are Zord 1, TJ's Lightning Fire Tamer Zord. Zord 2, Justin's Siren Blaster. Zord 3, Carlos's Thunder Loader. Zord 4, Ashley's Star Racer, and Zord 5, Cassie's Wind Rescue. Obviously all kind of based around an emergency and a rescue scenario, a theme that Toei and Bandai would latch onto and repeat again a couple years down the road. But it was really cool that the Rangers were acknowledging their role in rescuing the city rather than just bashing the monsters. As vehicles, these are all good toys. You can imagine what their individual special modes are supposed to be. Some of them are more interactive than others, like Star Racer and Thunder Loader. You can actually move the parts. Wind Rescue, yeah, it's basically just a box, isn't it? But Siren Blaster is an amazing vehicle, and I would say the best designed of the 5. Of course, you can go one further than that, and they actually turn into their own individual robots, which have helmets which kind of tie in with what their vehicle's based on, which is kind of cool. Much like the Super Zeo Zords the year before, each Zord is made completely differently and feels very different to each other. I like that, and I think it makes it even more impressive that somehow they all slot together. Finally, you do get the Turbo Rescue Megazord all combined mode, and this is pretty cool as well. It's slightly annoying that the show made its main weapon out to be an accessory from another toy, so its main weapon, you don't actually get that in the box because you need Artillotron for that. So look out for the third and final video where I'll go over that and Robo Racer all in one go. Turbo, I think, is one of the last seasons where the toys were made using really good quality plastic. That's not to say that the line instantly went horrendous straight after, or that they hadn't made slight errors previously, like the gold plastic in the accessories of the Ninja and Shogun Megazords, but I feel like something does start to creep into their materials, and we see it as soon as In Space the year after. It has its share of shattered brittle plastic and loose joints. Lightspeed Rescue, for example, had easily broken clips and more loose joints. Turbo, I strongly believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's the last season where you don't have that. You just have that 90s quality plastic. Transformations is certainly where I'm reminded of Beast Morphers, and who knows, maybe the 2020 Sentai Zords will introduce some double transforming mode Zords again. They're doing vehicles again this year, so it'll be interesting to see if they can introduce new elements and advance things on from the Ranger versus Lupin Ranger series that had cars and jets. But that each Zord could be its own transformer was, I thought as a kid, quite shocking back in 1997. Bear in mind that the most exciting it ever got then going from Zord to Megazord was the Dino Tank mode from the first ever Megazord. So here we had a totally new interpretation which added a heap more play value. When it's time to bring the Zords together to form Turbo Rescue Megazord, I think you're going to need your wits about you, because this is a somewhat complex transformation, especially by today's standards, Beast Morphers notwithstanding. It's good though, it isn't a parts former. Every Zord just nicely slides into a new configuration that allows it to join the Megazord. It's very satisfying to put together. Once again we have die-cast metal holding the legs on, and a nice ratcheting arm joint again. It feels very solid, very sturdy. I don't feel like by shaking it anything's going to fall off. It's just a well-constructed, well-put-together Megazord. What are the differences to the Japanese original? Well, I have to thank Collection DX for this because I had no idea. So the Lightning Fire Tamer, they removed metal from the extinguisher cannon connectors, chrome parts replaced with grey plastic, and no paint detail on wheels. This is something that will basically apply to all of them, and it's something that I could fix if I wanted to. I might break out the silver paints and the chrome marker that I recently got for the Lightning Collection Lord Zed. It could be done. Siren Blaster, the metal remained intact, you know, those leg clips again, the second Megazord ever to feature them, but the chrome parts were replaced with grey plastic. Thunder Loader, the metal arms and chrome rims were replaced with grey plastic. Star Racer, metal upper arms, chrome loader arms and rims were replaced with grey plastic. And Wind Rescue, there's no paint detail on the wheels. Also, unlike Turbo Megazord, there's no power vehicle insignia on the wheels or CR 400, 600, 800. Thank you, by the way, to everyone that pointed out that CR probably stood for Carranger in the last Turbo Zord review. I think it's pretty cool that they managed to acknowledge both the interpreters of the footage they were creating in the Megazord wheel design of that sort. So what's bad about it then? Well, proportions are strange, as you'd kind of expect a little bit in a Megazord that's expected to jump through this many hoops. I can't deny that the legs still look really weird sticking so far out from the thighs, or that the top half of the Megazord doesn't look very boxy. However, I do think it works slightly better for this than it does for the Turbo Megazord, because there's more different angles on the torso, you know, it goes in and out rather than just be a box. Smaller connections here can be easier to break. It's still good quality plastic, don't get me wrong, but some of the joints are so small that 25 years of time has given it a slight injury. Ironically, the medical professional Zord that has sustained the injury, the left arm of robot mode of the Wind Rescue robot has broken, but luckily is still functional, so that's just great engineering in itself that this thing's broken and yet still functions fine. Go 90s. Okay, I admit it, the combination is awful. Literally the only Zord changing combination possible in this entire season of the show is if you swap the arms and legs of the Turbo Megazord and the Turbo Rescue Megazord. They share them like spare car parts as though they're modding their own vehicle. Unfortunately, what you end up with in either case is a really rubbish Megazord that looks even worse than how they started. It's funny really, because this is effectively the start of what I term the limb swap era, something that we notably will see again in Wild Force, Dino Thunder, Mega Force, Dino Charge. But I think by then they'd worked out the issues, that being that changing too much at once and changing it for something smaller in mass doesn't work. I admit it ties in with the kind of car theme of the season, but I'm glad that's something that they realised was a mistake. Bar Dino Charge, we don't see again this idea of a Megazord swapping its arms and legs to smaller size ones. Fair enough, like Dino Charge, the arms will get swapped all the time, but it's more in proportion. Because Turbo and Turbo Rescue Zords are different sizes, they just don't look right with each other's limbs, I don't think. What do you guys think though? Is this just a problem for me, or did you think it looked bizarre? And also quite annoying that there was no extra transformations. Do you know, like before with like the Mega Tiger Zord or the Zeo Mega Battle Zord, there would be some changes happen. This one was literally just, you've got my arms, I've got your legs. I didn't get it. Accessories are pretty bad as well. I bought this second hand on eBay, and it looks like the seller must have lost the two black clips outlined in the instructions, used for stability. They clip on the back of the Turbo Megazord feet, and they keep the Megazord standing because it has quite little feet in comparison to what it's carrying up top. To be honest, I never think about them. It's also a bit of a step backwards, no pun intended, from the Zeo Megazord where the stabilizers were built into the Zords. I don't see why they couldn't have just done that again, but maybe the stabilizers were added quite late on and the only way to do that was as separate pieces. As it is, those are the two parts of the Zord set you can definitely live without. I imagine if you were playing with this thing on carpet, then those stabilizers would have had a purpose, but on a regular hard surface floor, it shouldn't fall backwards. Also, we've got these little Gatling gun things instead of a power sword. This is only our second Megazord overall and the first since Season 3's Ninja Megazord not to give us one. So you do get two rather boring blasters. Now a silver lining here perhaps is that Turbo Rescue Megazord has the exact same hand slot size as Turbo Megazord, so you could actually share weapons, the shield and the sword from the first release. But yeah, those guns are hollow on one side, just flat grey plastic colour. They never make you think, wow, what a part. For that impressiveness, unfortunately, you do need Artillatron. What's great about it? Well, there's just so much play potential here. You've got vehicles, robots, and the Megazord mode. And if you buy other Zords in the line, no, you can't combine them, but you can borrow their accessories. To be honest though, you don't really need to combine this with anything else. And looking at it, where would you even start if you did? There's so many grooves and different panel sizes, you wouldn't be able to just cover that up, so I can kind of see how we ended up in this situation. All Zords feel different enough, even yellow and green, which are once again challenged with being a pair of legs in the end. They, as Zords, feel very differently. You know, one of my complaints from last time was that the yellow and green Zords felt too similar. Well, here, I don't think that's a problem at all. I also like that some of the Zords have their own interactive elements, like the Thunder Loader has a kind of flatbed lifting truck thing, and Star Racer has its own pickup thing. Star Racer is confusing, like, is it a digger or is it a race car? Somehow it's both. I mean, that's pretty crazy for the 90s, I think. Probably more likely something they do these days. Of the 4 releases in the Power Rangers Turbo line, I do believe this is the best one. It holds a strong command of the basic Megazord theory, but introduces its own take on it, which is definitely something that at the time I totally took for granted. I just assumed, of course it gets better every year. I think gradually they do start running out of new ideas and new takes on it. This was truly one of the great ingenuities of the time. They managed to introduce new combinations. We'll see a lot of this repeated in Lightspeed Rescue, not just in name, but they introduced an individual transformation element that they never really gave us again until recently with the Go Busters and Beast Morphers toys. This was a feat of ingenuity and engineering. Turbo Rescue Megazord might be 23 years old, but it's still a really great Megazord today. Thanks for watching guys, do follow me on Instagram at PowerRangergram, let me know your thoughts on Turbo Rescue Megazord in the comments, and I'll see you next time.